We have all seen images of the horrors that took place at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and now Democrats in Congress are working to prevent history from repeating itself 4 years later. Our Scott MacFarlane reporting that, quote, Democrats have researched and discussed plans to ensure security is tight, and they've begun efforts to debunk emerging conspiracy theories about undocumented migrants voting in federal elections. Scott MacFarlane is here now with more on his reporting. Scott, this is fascinating. How do congressional Democrats think they can even make a dent in all of these conspiracy theories that are floating around? I was just in North Carolina. It was amazing how many voters I talked to who believed those theories.
There's so many things that need to be done to protect against post-election chaos, because there's any number of directions it can come from. Some of what they're planning is relatively simple to understand. Some of it's next level. Let's start with the easy stuff. The members of the House Committee on Administration, they have offices right there in the Longworth building across from the Capitol, have been talking about security, first of all, ensuring because they have oversight of the Capitol complex in their portfolio, all the security is in place to prevent a recurrence of January 6th. Got a lot easier because it has been designated a national Homeland Security event, so all kinds of resources are going to be on the grounds at the Capitol January 6th. That issue is pretty much put to the side now. It's taken care of. What about the election conspiracies about non-citizens voting? Well, that's a harder nut to crack because, as you mentioned, some of that is really enmeshed in people, but because they have federal voting law in their portfolio, they're trying to do messaging to push back on that. But here's the tricky thing. They are game planning or strategizing how to respond if there's a complication on January 6th we didn't see last time. Like, what if there's no Speaker of the House chosen by January 6, 2025? Doesn't seem that far-fetched since there wasn't a Speaker of the House chosen on January 6, 2023, when there was a standoff with a narrow majority. And there's a prospect of a narrow majority again in the U.S. House. They're actually trying to figure out, how do we navigate this? How do we ensure the electoral votes are counted as they're supposed to be if there are no rules of the House, no organized U.S. House, and no Speaker to sit there in that chair? Talked to a number of constitutional law scholars, and so have they, by the way, who say there's likely no way Congress can block a constitutional mandate like counting the electoral vote, but that sure is a foothold that could be used to obfuscate or block the clean process on January 6, 2025, and they are planning for that.
Right, or at the very least delay it. So is D.C. going to look like a fortress then on January 6th?
Ever since January 6th, every event of magnitude at the Capitol's had that fencing, that no-climb, 8-foot-tall black metal fencing. I would bet the mortgage you're going to see that type of fencing surrounding the Capitol again, not just on January 6, 2025, but likely for some time before then. There will be federal Homeland Security assets helping the Capitol Police. There's mutual aid, local police departments there, too. This feels like a hardened target for January 6, 2025. And all the people in this space with whom we speak about vulnerabilities post-election say, look instead to softer targets. If somebody's going to try to obscure or obfuscate with what's happening between November 5 and January 6, maybe they try to bring those efforts towards more vulnerable places where there's less resources, smaller communities, swing states, places where they don't have a war footing. The Capitol, I think, is already clear they're going to have a war footing.
You're talking about all the things that Democrats in Congress are trying to do. Democrats don't control Congress. The House Speaker himself, who is a Republican, has been reluctant at times to say that Donald Trump lost the last election. What impact does all that have? Are Republicans going to actively try to block some of these reforms that Democrats are trying to make?
Yeah, and the Republican House Speaker has been pressed on this before and said as long as it's a free and fair election, he sees no reason that it would go challenged or mitigated. That being said, Congress has done something to insulate either party from trying to mess with election results. They passed this Electoral Count Reform Act after January 6th. In fact, they passed it in late 2022. What it does is it raises the threshold of what number of members of Congress are needed to try to object and stop the count. Used to be just one. Any one member of the House and any one member of the Senate could stop the count cold. We saw that on January 6th. Now it requires 1/5 of each chamber. May not be a heavy lift to get a 1/5 of the U.S. House to want to do it, but there seems to be confidence. It may be difficult to get 1/5 of the U.S. Senate to be part of that effort. They think that insulates some of this.
That is fascinating. Scott MacFarlane, thank you so much for breaking it down. Appreciate it.